Welcome to ADQ's annual emissions inventory report workshop for submissions via CAERS. My name is Rene Sanzineza. I am an environmental engineer here at the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. For this workshop, I'm joined by Julia Darby and Melody Madden, who will be working in the background to answer some questions sent in the chat and share some useful links throughout this presentation. We will also have a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. I will start this presentation by giving you an overview of what we will cover today. We are going to start off with updates and news to note, including reports due date. Then we'll talk about the annual emissions inventory overview, which covers who must report, what pollutants to report, and how pollutants should be reported. We will also go over CAERS quality assurance and quality control checks, including issues CAERS may want you to address before passing the report validation and proceeding to the submission step. We are going to discuss common reporting issues. These are the additional issues not included in CAERS quality assurance and quality control checks. However, ADQ will need you to address them before we can accept the report and mark it complete for quality assurance purposes. Then we'll go over CAERS user application process. This application outlines the requirement for new users to access a facility in CAERS. Finally, we will conclude this presentation with a Q&A session. As you are all aware by now, ADQ has moved all facilities that previously reported in SLICE to CAERS since last year. We are no longer accepting emissions inventory reports in SLICE. We are currently offering one-on-one consultations for questions and issues related to emissions inventory preparation and reporting in CAERS. You can book a one-on-one consultation with one of us on our emissions inventory website. 2 weeks before the reports are due, we will offer office hours for quick questions and last-minute issues for individuals who have no time for scheduling a one-on-one consultation. There are multiple reasons why we decided to use CAERS for reporting, including the ability for facilities to select multiple throughputs, CAERS built-in emissions factor, and transparency in applying emissions controls. The ability to select multiple types of throughputs reduces the number of steps required to estimate emissions for a given process. Using suggested emissions factor based on ACC in CAERS simplify the quality assurance process on our end. In CAERS, it is easy to identify what processes are associated with a given control device. More importantly, CAERS streamlined the process of reporting Class 1 emissions inventory to EPA. This year's emissions inventory report's due date is June 1st. Note that June 1st is on a Sunday, so please make sure to submit the report by Friday, May 30th, if you are not planning on working over the weekend. Reports submitted on Monday, June 2nd or after will be considered late. In an emissions inventory, we are looking for actual amount of pollutants emitted by each permitted process in tons per year. We are not looking for potential to emit or PTE estimates in your permit. If your facility is located in an ozone planning area, we might ask for additional estimates for a typical ozone season, which usually starts on May 1st and ends on September 30th. To determine who must report, we reference the Arizona Administrative Code Title 18, Chapter 2, Section 327. This section requires facilities carrying Class 1 air quality permit to report emissions inventory every year. The same section also requires facility with Class 2 air quality permit to report emissions inventory once every 3 years. To determine if you are required to submit an emissions inventory report for the reporting year 2024, please check out our emissions inventory website. ADQ's permitted sources can be classified into 4 categories. Major point sources are the sources capable of emitting more than 10 tons per year of hazardous air pollutants or 100 tons per year of criteria air pollutants for a single pollutant. For compound pollutants, the threshold are more than 25 tons per year of hazardous air pollutants or 250 tons per year of criteria pollutant. Major point sources must report using CAERS. We also offer synthetic minor sources. These are sources with potential to emit above major point source threshold we just talked about, but has restrictions in the permit that guarantee emissions of no more than 80% of the threshold. These sources can report using CAERS or our minor source form. Minor point sources are the sources that are physically impossible for them to exceed the major point sources threshold, even with full operation for every second of the year. Minor sources typically uses our Excel or PDF reporting form, but can use CAERS if the operation is complex and hard to detail on our minor source form. Finally, we have portable sources, and these are sources that can operate in multiple places, including log crushers and screeners. These sources typically fulfill their reporting obligation in January during their annual compliance certification process in MyDEQ. For the rest of this presentation, we are going to focus on emissions reporting in CAERS, which concerns major point sources and selected minor sources. If you report for a minor source not included in CAERS and need a refresher on how to use minor source form, please review our recording posted on our emissions inventory website from last year's workshop. A complete emissions inventory should include a source name, address, and contacts. Be sure to specify both physical address and mailing address if they are different. Source information such as design capacity for each unit, operating schedule including hours operated per week and days operated per year. Control devices should be clearly identified and associated with the correct processes and pollutants. Emissions calculation method should clearly indicate what control efficiency is included in the emissions factor or if they are not. Report any single regulated pollutants with potential to emit greater than 1 ton in the actual quantities. For lead emissions, the significant level is 0.5 tons of actual emissions. For a combination of regulated air pollutants, such as volatile organic compounds and nitrogen oxides, report actual quantities for each unit with potential to emit greater than 2.5 tons. In terms of what pollutants to report, we ask that you report all pollutants outlined in your permit at the minimum. In most cases, these pollutants are sulfur dioxide, volatile organic compound, which should include all hazardous air pollutants, which are also VOCs. We're also looking for nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, lead and its compounds, fine particulate matter, coarse particulate matter, and ammonia. For particulate matter, we recommend reporting both primary particulate matter and its components. Those components are filterable and condensable portions. We also strongly recommend reporting significant individual hazardous air pollutants. At the end of the quality assurance period, we hand over the reports to our permitting team, which bills the Class 1 sources an annual emissions-based fee. This fee is separate from the permit processing fee, which is paid by all sources applying for an air quality permit. Please note that particulate matter subtotals, such as particulate matter filterable and condensable, and individual hazardous air pollutants are not billed as they are part of the total particulate matter and the volatile organic compounds, respectively. Moving on to CAERS quality checks, here are a few things to keep in mind to make sure your report passes CAERS quality checks. If reporting individual and hazardous air pollutant species, they must be less than total VOC. Similarly, primary particulate matter 2.5 must be less than or equal to primary PM10 for each process. More on particulate matter and its components. Essentially, we recommend reporting 5 components of particulate matter for each process. For example, one process should report primary particulate matter PM10, primary particulate matter 2.5, filterable PM10, filterable PM2.5, and condensable PM. PM10 filterable should be greater than or equal to PM2.5 filterable. Primary PM10 should be the sum of filterable PM10 and condensable PM. Similarly, primary PM2.5 is the sum of filterable PM2.5 and condensable PM. Condensable PM should be 0 for mechanical processes, making primary PM primary equal to filterable component. Errors that CAERS will warn you about include negative emissions estimates or negative emissions factors. Emissions factors also cannot be 0, but emissions estimate can be 0. A calculation method must be selected for an emissions factor-based calculation. For processes with no emissions, please report 0 emissions or mark them for temporary shutdown. We are going to switch gears and talk about common issues that passes CAERS quality checks, but need to be addressed before we can accept the reports for quality assurance. Regarding the release points, all emissions release points must have latitude and longitude coordinates. Make sure the coordinates are within the facility fence line. In the past, for some facilities, we had to ask EPA to increase the coordinate tolerance because CAERS returns error regarding the release points being outside of the facility fence line if the facility has a large land area. For stack release points, please provide stack height, diameter, and exit temperature. Fugitives can be lumped into facility-wide area or a specific area. Either way, provide the coordinates and, if possible, width and length of the release area. For control devices, clearly specify the control efficiency for all control pollutants. More importantly, avoid mixing pre- and post-control calculation method for a single process. More on pre- and post-control calculation method on the next 2 slides. For pre-control calculation method, make sure to add a variable control percentage. In this hypothetical facility, we can clearly see that the selected process is associated with a control device which has a 74% control efficiency for nitrogen oxide emissions. For post-control calculation method, do not enter overall control percentage since the control is already incorporated in the emissions factor. Adding an overall control will be applying a control percentage twice. Both methods are valid. Just make sure to use the method you use is clearly identified and matches what is in your supporting documents. The next issue concerns the source classification codes or ACCs. Please make sure to use the current and up-to-date ACC which can be found on EPA's website. Sometimes there is no ACC available describing a process. If that is the case, use an ACC describing a process as close to your actual process as possible. CAERS will return an error if multiple processes belonging to the same unit with the same ACC and same operation schedule. To address this error, operating schedule must be slightly modified for the process to be different to each other. For example, give one process 25% for each season. For the second process, give 25% for each of the 2 seasons and 24% and 26% for the remaining 2 seasons. This helps CAERS system recognize the 2 processes are different. For those reporting emissions inventories for compressor stations, landfill, and power plants, our team has developed a guidance document which outlines preferred ACC for each unit process typically found at those facilities. You can find these guidance documents on our website. We compare reported ACCs to the ACCs listed in these documents during our QA process. By the way, if there is no ACC to best describe your process, please let us know. We can always work with EPA to create a new ACC if that is necessary. Regarding data entry, there are 2 ways to enter data in the CAERS system. First one is uploading a formatted Excel template downloaded from CAERS, or the second option is entering data using the graphical user interface. Both methods work equally, just do not mix them. Choose one and stick with it. If using CAERS template method for data entry, we recommend downloading a new copy each year. Using old templates will result in overriding changes made after the template was last created. For emissions calculation methods, continuous emissions monitoring system or SEMS and stack test data are preferred. If those methods are not applicable to a process, then we recommend using AP42. In case the first 3 calculation methods are not applicable, we will accept other calculation methods with appropriate documentation. Any calculation method other than SEMS and AP42 should have a supporting documentation. If you're unsure what documentation to provide, we have prepared a guidance document to identify the documentation needed for each calculation method. This documentation can be found on our emissions inventory website. Check out our emissions inventory website to learn more about the required documentation for each calculation method. For emissions factor retrieved from manufacturer specification, vendors or trade group fact sheets, we need a copy of those documents. Emissions factors from stack test reports please provide a copy of the test report. For engineering judgment, material balance, or derived emissions factors, please provide a relevant sample calculation. Overall, please make sure to share with us a copy of any documentation used in emissions calculation. For compliance issues in our quality assurance process, we work with the compliance team to get a list of facilities that have received a notice of violation in the current reporting year. If you received this notice for a period in 2024 and the violation impacted the emissions at your facility, please make sure to include this impact in your emissions estimates. We also compare the list of equipment in your current permit with the equipment reported in your emissions inventory. If there is a new equipment operated in 2024 and was not added to the report, we will request that you add it to CAERS and estimate its emissions before we accept the report. Remember, you can always mark temporary shutdown non-operational equipment. We also make sure that all required pollutants are reported. As we discussed earlier, pollutants with potential to emit greater than 1 ton individually or 2.5 tons in combination of pollutants must be reported regardless of the level of actual emissions. For lead, the reporting threshold is a half ton of actual emissions. Another step in our quality assurance is to compare current emissions inventory with emissions reported in the past 3 years for each pollutant on the process level. Please make sure that changes in emissions between years can be attributed to changes in throughput, emissions factor, or new and upgraded control devices, or changes in emission calculation methodology. If changes in emissions cannot be explained by changes in these parameters, we will investigate and find the root cause and return the report for you to make adjustments. Making sure changes in emissions have valid reasons speed up our quality assurance processes and reduce, if not eliminate, extra work you have to do for the report to pass the quality assurance. Addressing report deficiencies is an important step of our quality assurance process. These are our recommendations to speed up the review of your facility. If we reach out to you with questions regarding your report, please reply back to us no later than a week after receiving the initial email. If some questions we ask are not clear or are complex to answer in email, we are always available for a video call to resolve any misunderstanding. After we agree on changes to make, you will have 1 week to make those changes and resubmit the report. We can always grant more than a week to make those changes, as long as we have agreed on those changes within a week of initial contact. If you take too long to answer the initial email, that reduces the amount of time we can allocate to reviewing and completing your report. It is always a great practice to let us know the changes you made before resubmitting the report. That way, we can catch any changes missed and avoid returning the report for a second revision. Finally, our review process starts mid-June and ends on August 30th. If your certifier is going to be out on vacation or an extended period, please let us know. We can arrange to review your facility before the certifier goes on leave, or do the review after they return. The same arrangement can be made for prepare as well. Now I'll end this presentation by going over the process of adding a new user to your facility in CAERS. The first step is to send us a CAERS user application form. A copy of this application form can be downloaded on our emissions inventory website. Fill out the form, select the role you are applying for, and have a facility responsible official sign and date the form. Finally, send us the form in our delegated inbox at emissions-inventory@azdeq.gov. Please note that the facility can have multiple preparers, but can only have one certifier. After sending us the CARES user application form, a new user also needs to create a CDX account at cdx.epa.gov. Then go through identity verification, and select a user role. On the facility side, there are two roles available: a preparer, which can be a staff at the facility, or a consultant. The other role is the certifier, which is only granted to an individual authorized to submit emissions report on behalf of the facility. As a certifier, you are responsible of what goes on at your facility in CAERS. As soon as the staff leave the facility, please let us know so that we can remove the access to the facility in CAERS. That's all we had planned to share with you all today. Thank you very much for your participation. If you need to reach out to us, the best way is to send us an email at emissions-inventory@azdeq.gov. This email is monitored daily and we reply to most emails the same day. When replying to the email from this inbox, please do not reply to the personal email of the staff who sent the email from the delegated inbox. Always reply to emissions-inventory@azdeq.gov. You can also call us at the number listed, but we might not be able to answer right away. Please leave a message and we will call you as soon as we can. Here are some useful links for EPA's CARES user guide and emissions inventory training. There is also links for our emissions inventory website and a subscription to our mailing list for emissions inventory news and updates. Thank you again. We will now take your questions. I see one question in the chat asking if we'll be posting the recording on ADQ website. Yes, we'll be posting this recording and the slides of this presentation on our emissions inventory website sometime next week. Do we have any other questions?
Renee, I'm looking at the chat here and I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, but I'm not certain that they're coming through to me. So if there are other questions, I can't see them. So it seems like you can.
Yeah, if you have any question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question, or you can type in the chat as well. Okay, looks like we're not getting any questions. So this is the end of this presentation, but I'll stay on for a few more minutes in case anyone has a particular questions. But everyone else, you are free to go. Thank you very much.